Next week, we've got a special, and we're going to show you the effect of government regulations on this country. We're going to show you how many regulators they are, how many regulations they have promulgated, what it's doing to business, what it's doing to the banks. We're going to show you next week. But the president says, forget the regulations, I've got a plan. As if this was the first plan. He's had many plans, but he's going to lay out a plan for jobs and improving the economy.
This time the president's going to do it in front of a joint session of Congress. Dale Hurd has this look at the jobs crisis and what Obama may propose.
President Obama knows his re-election in 2012 depends on how many Americans are working.
Our economy has to grow faster. We have to create more jobs, and we have to do it faster.
The 10,000 unemployed who lined up at this jobs fair in Los Angeles were a testimony to just how troubled the job market remains.
It is bad.
Really bad right now.
Next Thursday, the president plans to outline his jobs plan before a rare joint session of Congress.
We've got to break the gridlock in Washington that's been preventing us from taking the action we need to get this country moving.
The president has been getting hammered regularly over the jobs issue by Republican hopefuls who want his job.
There is no more urgent priority at this point in our nation's history than creating jobs.
The engine of economic growth is the business sector.
President Obama's jobs plan reportedly consists of tax relief, including a $33 billion tax credit for companies that hire new workers, infrastructure investment, a special government bank and funding for building projects like transportation, and so-called targeted assistance for the long-term unemployed. The president had hoped to deliver his address to Congress next Wednesday, the same night as the Republican debate, but House Speaker Boehner said no. Now the president's speech will have to face off against the NFL season opener next Thursday night. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Most amazing thing, again, it's a Band-Aid. It's a short-term fix, a short-term credit for hiring people, which is not going to work. You just ask yourself, with this mass of regulations and the uncertainty as to the tax future and the president banging away on the so-called rich, the people who create jobs, day after day, he demagogues against those who provide jobs, and then he wonders why there aren't any jobs. You just say, wake up, smell the coffee. Lee Webb, it's morning in America.
And Pat, related to all of that, a solar power company that received a $535 million loan from the federal government, guess what? It's shutting down and plans to file for bankruptcy. The White House called Solyndra an example of clean technology. Critics, though, say Solyndra's business model was never going to work. Others believe the Obama administration played favorites in giving the company a loan, and in fact, the Government Accountability Office said the Obama Energy Department had not treated applicants consistently, favoring some over others. August was the deadliest month for U.S. troops in the 10-year history of the Afghan war. 66 service members died. Nearly half of those troops, of course, were killed when the Taliban shot down a Chinook helicopter. Meanwhile, August was the first month that no Americans were killed in the Iraq War. Women who have an abortion are more likely to suffer from mental health issues. That's the finding of a study done at Bowling Green State University in Ohio. It found that terminating a pregnancy can double the risk of severe mental health problems. And among women, 1 in 10 of all mental health issues is a result of abortion. Professor Priscilla Coleman conducted the study. She says there are, in fact, some real risks associated with abortion that should be shared with women as they are counseled prior to an abortion. Pat?
We have had a culture of death in America, and the feminists have pushed, screamed, yelled, beat on their tables, and threatened congressmen to pass legislation that make abortion quite available. They call it safe and legal. And then the Supreme Court in Roe versus Wade, a disastrous decision which had no merit whatsoever in terms of legal precedent. It was called Blackmun's abortion. He wrote the decision. They have foisted on the American woman the thought that having abortion is your option. And that meant have plenty of sex, but don't worry about the consequences thereof. So we'll give you an abortion, have your sex, but if you have a baby, we'll let you abort it with no problem. Well, there is a problem. The problem, of course, is infertility, which comes about quite frequently. But now, mental illness. These women are feeling guilt, and they're racked with problems. I've killed a baby, and it keeps going on and on and on in their minds. And this is a study, by the way, I'm glad to see, that was led by a woman in Ohio at a university. Lee?
Pat, lung cancer is the deadliest form of cancer. It affects more than 200,000 people a year. The Food and Drug Administration has just approved a pill to fight the disease. It helps only a small percentage of lung cancer patients. Still, the results are promising. Lori Johnson has that story.
Tina Miranda was dying of stage 4 lung cancer.
I would beg my kids to play right in front of me so I could be around them, because basically I could do hardly anything.
She had been given only weeks to live.
My oncologist basically said there was absolutely nothing he could do.
Out of desperation, her husband began searching the internet, looking for anything that might save his wife. That's when he stumbled across Xalkori, a new drug manufactured by Pfizer. It's only effective for a small number of patients. For it to work, they must have non-small cell lung cancer as well as what is known as the ALK gene. Only 7% of people diagnosed with lung cancer every year have it. Tina was among the 7%.
90% will have some type of response, and 60% actually have a very significant response.
Within hours, 24 hours, I started getting better, and today I'm off all painkillers. I've got more energy than I've had in 3 years, and it's just wonderful.
The ALK gene makes tumors grow out of control. Xalkori goes after the gene and shuts it down quickly. It is still unclear how long the pills will be effective. Patients take the pill until it stops fighting their tumors. After that, they're put back on chemo drugs. Tina says it's enough that life is now livable again.
I'm loving life. They're loving life. I'm glad to be back to almost normal.
Experts say that Xalkori is an example of what many say is drug makers' new strategy, developing medicines that will effectively help few patients instead of a generic drug for the masses. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Promising, but the new drug isn't cheap. It's more than $9,000 a month. Half of all Americans drink at least one sugary drink each day, and a new report from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention shows many more drink way more than that. The report finds 1 in 20 people drink the equivalent of more than 4 cans of soda daily. Experts say you should drink less than half of a can per day. An average can of soda or juice has 10 to 12 teaspoons of sugar. The drinks have been linked to America's growing obesity epidemic. Campaigns against sugary drinks are popping up all over the country. Of course, one of the most famous Bible stories is Noah's Ark. Now people can visit a life-size replica of the Ark in one of the world's most famous cities, Hong Kong. Here's Chris Mitchell.
The Ark rises next to a huge suspension bridge and one of the world's busiest waterways. Its story begins with a unique partnership, including a government, a developer, and Christian organizations working together. In the late 90s, Hong Kong needed a bridge to connect the city with its new airport. Matthew Pine is manager of Noah's Ark theme park.
And as part of the whole development scheme, there was an island that needed to be developed to enable the building of the bridge.
As a lawyer for the developers, Yugo Chan's message to the government was,
"We can help you build the bridge, negotiate with the owners of the land on the island, build a theme park for the community. Let us relocate the villagers and build a residential development."
So the government built the bridge, these apartments, and a theme park. But at first, they didn't know what kind of theme park.
They had vision to do something remarkable, something outstanding. So they came up with many ideas. Some of them were really outrageous and some of them were very unreasonable.
But the big vision of the Ark came from a little girl.
It came from the heart of an 8-year-old girl. She drew a little picture, her dad took it, the government officials loved it, and from there on the architects and engineers developed the plan, the marketing teams came alongside, and the Hong Kong government also came to support it as well. and they eventually created what you've seen today.
The contractors built the ark the same dimensions the Bible says Noah did: 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Many believe it was the largest wooden structure ever to roam the seas. One thing you notice up close is that it's big, very big. Outside, a garden features nearly 70 pairs of life-size replicas of animals from the ark, and a few real live ones. Inside, it contains exhibits with rare animals like a nautilus, a toucan, and exotic fish. Original animations show how the ark could have been constructed or how it might have been ventilated. You also discover the story of a major flood is nearly universal throughout the world's ancient cultures. The designers told Noah's story at the time he opens the ark after the flood.
And the reason we chose that moment in the story is because this is the message we want to bring to Hong Kong, we want to bring to China, we want to bring to the world today. And it's this: in our lives, we will always face floods. We will face trials, we will face difficulties, we will face tribulations. In our lives, sometimes that's sickness, sometimes that's financial troubles, sometimes that's troubles with relationships. If we can find a vessel to pass through those storms, those floods in our lives that may even threaten our very lives, then we can pass through, have a new beginning, have a new hope, as it was in Noah's day.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Noah's Ark, Hong Kong.
Pat, I think that's well said. I mean, people get to see up close and personal that God, in fact, had a plan to redeem his people.
Isn't that marvelous? Well, the gentleman who, I believe Hugo Chan, the member of the Full Gospel Businessman, Spirit-filled Christian, he's a lawyer, a very brilliant man, and it's just so great that in Hong Kong they've embraced this story so people from all around the world will go to China. And I've said before, I'm going to say it again, China is going to become the largest Christian nation on the face of the earth. Probably is right now if we just count everybody in the underground church, but it's going to be huge. And this is just one more example. I love the Chinese people. I love China. And if you go to Hong Kong, it's a country that is actually free. It's got more economic freedom than we do here in America. But to have that ark there is just wonderful.
That's quite a sight to behold.
It is indeed.
That entire area.
The American Civil Liberties Union is fighting a Kansas school district over its internet filters. The ACLU filed a federal lawsuit claiming that Camden schools block gay, lesbian, and transgender informational websites, but allows students to access sites that condemn homosexuality. The Camden School Board says they want to respect their students' constitutional rights, but also protect them from inappropriate material on the internet. The superintendent says no student has ever asked a staff member for access to one of the blocked sites. A federal judge in Texas is blocking a key provision of the state's new sonogram law. Judge Sam Sparks upheld a requirement that sonograms be performed before an abortion, but he struck down the provision requiring doctors to describe the images to their patients. Supporters argue the provision will help women fully understand the process of an abortion, but opponents say it dictates how a doctor must deal with a patient. Well, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.